What's up everyone, it's ENDYMION, and there's some new things I think people really need to know about. From a new buzzword that is quickly replacing concepts like DEI. That word, by the way, is bridge. And we'll get more into what that is later on, but trust me, it's something you need to know because this is all evolving into new forms. We also have DEI consultant agencies calling to blacklist people they don't agree with from the games industry and much more, so let's start with that. From thatparkplace.com, we have this article titled, DEI consultancy Naysaga and Kotaku senior editor Alyssa Mercanti call for former World of Warcraft team lead Mark Kern to be blacklisted from video game industry. Mark Kern, by the way, is the real name of Grums, in case you didn't know. Obviously, for well over a month now, Grums has become something of a boogeyman for the gaming industry, especially since the whole Sweet Baby Inc. thing has happened. He's been asking a lot of questions and compiling information which of course the broader industry does not like whatsoever. This had led to all sorts of hit pieces from Kotaku, The Verge, and many others which have all pretty much done nothing but make things worse for them. Then of course recently we had the community managers of various game franchises getting pulled into the light as well, which led to a lot of bad blood happening, and even I was pulled into it when I spoke about a nefarious email that didn't look genuine at all. And I ended up getting swarmed by game industry people for attempting to ask questions when they didn't want anything to be asked. And I think that's what really fires me up, is that when you prod the beast and simply ask questions, you're labeled all sorts of buzzwords in return. Why is it so hard to answer some questions? Why can't I look at something that's happening and give my opinion on it without being swarmed? The simple answer, it's likely because I have a bad case of the wrong thing, but the truth is that it's simply because these people don't want their jobs or echo chambers to be targeted or have lights shined on them. Of course, that hasn't stopped me, nor will it going forward, because I think it's important to ask questions, even if what's being asked is uncomfortable or considered problematic. After speaking with a certain community manager, I realized not all of these people are as bad as they may seem. Well, not entirely anyway. But of course, as things become unearthed, it's proving that the games industry is definitely filled with rot. And like always, I have to ask the hard questions, otherwise these things will continue to just destroy everything. So now another DEI consultant agency has entered the fray. They're like Sweet Baby, but they work with brands primarily outside of video games. That's not to say they're not in the gaming space, they are, but they've also worked with stuff like Nike and so on. They're called Naysaga. They were founded in 2015. Here's what it says on their official website. Founded in 2015 by Stephanie Ijoma, there was a dire need for change in the games and entertainment space. Our fundamental values ensure that we prioritize diversity, inclusion, representation, and equity in the pillars we dominate. While as continuing to create safe spaces and shifting the narratives, Naysaga is an influential force that has created impact beyond gaming and more across many verticals. There's a lot said there, with some worrying parts thrown in for good measure. Stuff like shifting the narratives, which means this specific consultancy agency works to alter how things are perceived. Obviously, it could be for the good of things, and I don't doubt that they've had at least some positive impact when it comes to their existence. But we also know that this explosion of DEI consultancy agencies has erupted in the last few years across the board. There's actually more than 15 of these startups, all beginning within the last 9 years or so. That includes Sweet Baby, by the way, which is technically a younger company than Naysaga by 3 years or so. Naysaga has called for the games industry at large to silence and blacklist Grums, and pretty much every day I'm seeing more people in the games industry pushing back against Grums because of his reporting on their activities. What's very weird is that what they're mad at Grums for is something that doesn't make a lot of sense when you actually look at it. Grums has been compiling screenshots and lists of people who work in games that have a very blatant anti-white consumer viewpoint. And these people seem to just openly hate white individuals for simply existing, and going as far as to say being racist towards white people is impossible, which is ridiculous by the way, but they think it anyway. Some of the people accused include Alyssa Mercanti of Kotaku, which has already said you can't be racist towards white people, as well as Liana Rupert, who's a community manager for Fallout's Amazon Prime series and more. I find it very sad that anyone could believe a narrative like this and think it's somehow impossible to be racist towards a certain group simply because of the color of their skin, and to also believe that other groups can't really be racist because they are allegedly systematically oppressed. which I find to be largely BS, to be honest with you, because if anything, the last 10 to 15 years at least has been nothing but opening doors for everyone across the board. And largely speaking, when it comes to hiring practices or even attending colleges, it actually benefits you if you are anything but a white man. In fact, white men in general, as well as Asian men, are facing discrimination at an alarmingly high rate. And they are being attacked and silenced by groups like these into compliance, and I think that's wrong. Of course, it doesn't escape me that the gaming industry at large has also become a far worse place since practices like these have been implemented. You and I both know that the quality of games has decreased substantially year over year. Sure, there's still some great things coming out like your Elden Rings, Baldur's Gates, or Pal Worlds, but there's a lot of really middling games that seem to get worse with every passing year. Suicide Squad is of course one of them. Spider-Man 2 upset a lot of people for good reason. Gotham Knights was not a good game. Forspoken was terrible. Even Call of Duty seems to be getting worse with every passing year, somehow too. And I think the reason for a lot of these things is because priorities have shifted and what used to be considered the gold standard has been replaced with a new ideological viewpoint instead. It no longer seems to matter if the people being hired are good at their jobs or have any experience, but instead they're hired simply based on who they are or what they identify as, which I mean is technically a legal thing you can do. Companies can hire whoever they wish. But I do think it's becoming abundantly clear that this push of hiring identity before talent has done nothing but worsen everything across the board. I don't care if the designer or artist on a game is a woman or person of color. I just want a good game that doesn't talk down to me. The company Supergiant Games has all of their art done by a woman, and guess what? Those games look amazing. I don't really care that a woman did it, I'm just happy that the games look nice, and that's the point. Instead of letting the work speak for itself, it seems like companies are far more interested in letting the workers speak instead of doing the actual work that is required. As I've said before, I think one of the best composers in the industry is Yoko Shimomura, who's obviously a woman. I don't care at all what she is, she could look like anything. The point is that her music is amazing and she's great at what she does. She's done soundtracks for games like Final Fantasy XV, not to mention basically all of the Kingdom Hearts games. If you like a song from Kingdom Hearts, it's probably because she made it. The woman is insanely talented. I also think one of the best artists in video games, or basically just art in general, is a woman named Ayami Kojima. You likely know her since she's done Castlevania for years at this point. Everything on screen right now, that's Ayami Kojima's work. And just look at it, dude, it's amazing, like a beautiful gothic nightmare in every piece. Her art is something I've marveled over pretty much my entire life, and I would argue that Ayami Kojima's art has left an impression on me that has stayed within my mind since the moment I first laid eyes upon it. She's an amazing artist, and I love her work to death. I should honestly get some of her art framed to put in my house, it's just that good. Another great artist is Fiona Staples. You probably know her as the artist behind the comic series Saga. I met Fiona Staples once at a con. She's a very nice lady, and her art is just amazing, man. Just look at it. I'm surprised Saga hasn't gotten the Invincible TV treatment yet, but I'm sure one day that'll likely happen. But the art in that series is amazing. There's a cat that knows when you're lying no matter what. There's people with TVs for heads that change screens based on their emotions. And the story starts anyway with two people of opposing sides falling in love with one another and then running away with their child. What I'm trying to say here is that when something is good, whether it's art or music or anything else, it should speak for itself always. It shouldn't matter what someone looks like behind the camera or monitor, and I think art in general was far better off when people were just insanely talented and being able to speak with their art. I don't care to support something if someone says this art is black owned or made by some white guy either. None of that really matters. Art is subjective and different things will resonate with different people. And I know it doesn't matter who makes things as long as it's good, because characters like Black Panther are championed by black people everywhere, yet the character was made by some old white guys. The point is that I think every industry, whether it's games, movies, and so on, are far too up their own asses to see what people really want. They just see the pronouns, the skin color, and whatever else, and they think, yeah, that's probably enough, but it isn't. And I think consultancy agencies like a Saga or these journalists, which I put in quotations, are angry because they're realizing their existences within these professions is being questioned by a lot of people, and for good reason. And I think if the only way you can respond to genuine questions being asked like, what do you actually bring to the table, And are you actually qualified for the job and your answer is simply to block or yell harassment? It's never going to be a good look. I think the fact many of these consultancy agencies, whether it's Black Girl Gamers, Sweet Baby, and others, just curl up into balls and scream bloody murder, it just shows you how fragile their principles really are. Yet people like me, for example, will get waves of backlash online, and I don't silence any of it because people are allowed to hate me and have their opinion about me. I just let my work and my credibility speak for itself, and I think by doing that, I've won over more people than I've lost in the long run. I think these consultancy agencies asking for people like Grums to be blacklisted is nothing but an intimidation tactic in order to get him to stop doing what he's doing. But they don't realize that people like Grums just get emboldened by their resistance. And I think that we need to ask questions when it comes to things like this, otherwise, what are we even doing in the first place? Sure, it might be uncomfortable to ask someone, hey, why did you say that in the past, like white people are scum, for example, but that's what actual journalism is. Most of these websites aren't going to ask Nay Saga or someone like Liana Rupert about their racist comments in the past, because if they do, they will be treated how Grums or even I do. I don't care if people in the games industry hate me or against me, that's fine. Because they know deep in their hearts that there was a rot festering, and they are obviously too scared themselves to do anything about it. So naturally, someone has to shoulder that burden and ask the real questions. I know devs are scared, I talk to them, but they can't reasonably say publicly that, hey, I don't like how white people are treated in video games, because they'll get silenced, fired, and then thrown to the wolves. I don't answer to any of these video game CEOs, their HR departments mean nothing to me. They can send me a form saying they don't like me, I'll just light it on fire, or tell them to fold it up nicely and shove it up between their butt cheeks. You can hate me all you want, you probably hate any of the other YouTubers out there doing similar work too. They can hate all of us, but the truth is that we're far past the point of just sitting down and taking it. I'm not going to lose sleep knowing I'll never get invited to the Game Awards or something, because who cares? Oh no, I won't be able to sit in an auditorium while some out-of-touch Hollywood star who has nothing to do with video games presents an award. And then we get to cut to a commercial break for Mountain Dew as Jeff Keighley yet again refuses to acknowledge the layoffs in the industry. But he will also allow 10 minutes to have Kojima just stand there on stage and smile at the crowd. Oh, how will I live with myself, I wonder. And before anyone says, look, I like Kojima's work, hell, throughout this video I've used footage from Death Stranding, which I personally think is a great game. But maybe, can we not have celebrities on stage and instead get some actual game developers? I would love for award shows to have some programmer from a company who's like, hey, I'm so-and-so from this studio, I worked on the environmental design for this game. Anyway, here's the nominees for Best Environmental Design or something. I think that'd be great. Maybe you could pair up a game dev with a celebrity and then you can hit two birds with one stone. But I think the way things are going right now, the industry is so large and there's so many moving gears that it's honestly a goddamn miracle that most of these games even make it out the door at all. Any video game made is a mixture of hard work, luck, and insanity. I understand that. I just think the industry has been hijacked by activists who are driving a wedge between the players and the actual talented people who are making games for all the right reasons. But unfortunately, these games like South of Midnight, which Grums reported already and I covered twice, I think if memory serves, has been hijacked by DEI activists. And devs are so scared of losing their jobs, they have to resort to speaking anonymously in DMs to tell us just how bad things really are. We don't just pull this information out of nowhere. I'm not Khalif Adams, who said the voices in his head told him that Grums and his supporters caused a DDoS attack on Compulsion Games and then had no evidence of it even happening. And there was also no evidence whatsoever of said DDoS attack even existing in any form. Likely him or Alyssa Mercanti went to load Compulsion Games' website and their internet crapped out because they forgot to pay their internet service provider and they went, could this be Grums' fault? Is Grums responsible for my internet crapping out in my apartment that I share with 6 other roommates and their partners? Could it be that technology is just sometimes a little wonky? No, of course not. This is Grums' fault. Instead, the voices in these people's heads, which each harbor some new insane personality like they're the freaking X-Men Legion himself, go, this has to be Grums' fault and I have to be a victim. It just has to be. And then voila, magically there was a supposed DDoS attack on a woke game studio. With no proof of any kind, but that didn't matter because morons on Twitter and so on ran with it anyway. And so like I said in my previous video, most of the time we don't even have to do anything to get these people to talk. I can just sit here, naked on my couch, double cheeked up on a Sunday afternoon drinking coffee and playing video games. And somehow, some way, a weirdo in the games industry will hear the voice of Archangel Michael telling them that Grums is now the Antichrist. And they'll just start screaming that something has happened to them, when in reality they probably just forgot to take their meds and need to stop drinking iced coffee and cigarettes for breakfast. Then we have another person, this time from Respawn Entertainment, saying some dumb stuff. Also from thatparkplace.com, this article is titled, Systems Design Director at Respawn Entertainment, Raim Vincent, defends Fallout community manager who claimed the broader community of white people are racist. Raim said in response to Grums compiling screenshots of community managers, again with the grifting and griefing from this boring lot. At this point, you can assume that anyone they've singled out and preyed on, like Liana Rupert here, is a person worth knowing and standing next to. You can ignore the mean losers. I should mention that some of the tweets that got unearthed, for example from Liana Rupert, included her defending another person in the space called Christina Ariel, who was someone that has attacked white people in the past. When she came to the defense, a user then said, "Don't talk ridiculous, someone who constantly attacks white men and women and clearly states we are not allowed to talk about racism. This woman is a racist and hypocritical AF, she is forever playing the victim, I am so sick of fake SJWs defending this behavior. It's wrong to be a racist no matter what side you are on, stop it." And I agree with this user on that. It doesn't matter who you are or what color or anything, stop attacking people and generalizing them in ways like this. Not all white people are bad or racist, and neither are black people or Asian people either. Can we instead dictate these things on a person-by-person basis instead? I think that's much better. Of course, Liana replied back in 2021 with, "Fundamentally, people of color can't be racist against white people, they can have bias, but racism is systematic, and in the US, the system benefits the white community, and has been since we established ourselves at the start of our country's history. And this is, yet again, where I disagree. You can be racist towards white people because we see it every day. We're seeing industries like movies, games, and so on deliberately go out of their way to not hire people because they're white. That is by definition racism, and there's no way anyone can spin that story to make it sound better. I should remind people I did talk to Liana Rupert in the DMs in regards to my previous video, and she did say she apologized for a lot of these comments she has made in the past. While I understand that, I just think people should not spew this sort of rhetoric ever. Imagine saying all black people are racist or that all Asian people are somehow bad. It's stupid because it's not true. And when it comes to consultancy groups like Nesaga and others attempting to silence or ban Grums, it just shows that none of these groups are willing to defend their positions or ideologies. And it's mostly because if their ways of thinking were challenged, they would quickly realize how weird and racist they really are. Finally, let's talk about bridges. So you obviously know terms like DEI, woke, and so on. Well, you can add bridge to the group now too. Every few years, corporations tend to find new ways to package the same old nonsense in new ways. And I think you need to know what bridge stands for going forward, because you're about to hear pretty much every company in existence start to use this term. It's going to be the new replacement term for DEI basically. If you go to socialimpact.com, you can find a lot more information, but I'll condense it here for you. According to their official website, this is what bridge is for, and I quote, "Bridge stands for Benchmarking Race, Inclusion, and Diversity in Global Engagement. Bridge is an institutional survey that explores diversity, equity, and inclusion, and accessibility, metrics, structures, and practices at the organizational level across U.S. registered organizations in the international development and humanitarian sector. Bridge has become a social movement of organizations dedicated to using evidence to advance DEI goals within their organizations and at the sectoral level. The data from Bridge serves as a tool for our community to ground truth organizational practices with evidence and serves as a call to action to advance equity and inclusion in the sector. For many organizations in the United States, attention to DEI increased exponentially after the murder of George Floyd in the summer of 2020 and the massive racial justice mobilization that followed. In response, many organizations in the international development sector searched to find documented efforts at the sectoral level on the extent of the industry's DEI challenges. What they found, however, was a startling gap in publicly available sector-wide data on diversity. While a number of strategic actions are needed to meaningfully address the legacy of structural racism and other inequities in our sector and the organizations within it, establishing baseline evidence is among the first steps needed. Having this data will enable individuals and collective action. Organizations will be able to compare their own data to the industry benchmark and identify areas where they need to focus their efforts. At the sectoral level, the data could point to gaps where joint action is required to achieve meaningful and lasting change. The data will also provide a basis for mutual accountability and ultimately contribute to changing the sector for the better. Further, Bridge 2.0 and further iterations will provide time series trends of DEI metrics, distill what is and what is not working, and serve a real-time guide to advance DEI within organizations. End quote. So Bridge is going to be the new benchmark for everything going forward, and so far it's mostly a term that will be used in the United States as of now anyway, but obviously will eventually become synonymous across the world too. There is that one part where they said organizations will be able to compare their own data to the industry benchmark and identify areas where they need to focus their efforts. This is basically another way of just rebranding ESG scores. Companies will now be incentivized to push as much diversity and inclusion as humanly possible into everything they do. Obviously, this isn't to make money because largely speaking, these efforts are not economically smart. But it's done to show how virtuous your company is, and yes, it's basically just a dick measuring contest between companies who have way too much money. So they're coming up with stupid reasons to outdo each other, basically. So if you see in the future some CEO or whatever on stage during something say we need to bridge the gap or bridge our audience to new horizons, or whatever other cringe way they can implement a bridge into a sentence, I want you to keep your ears open to that. Because they know terms like DEI or woke have become very well known by pretty much the general audience, and now they need to basically respect their skill points and try a new build. But we're already onto it and others within the space, so I just want you to all know this. Wokeness and the destruction of IP will not stop anytime soon, and these companies are going to fight tooth and nail to ensure this vision is actualized. But remember ultimately that they can change the terms all they want, the audience will always find out. Whether it's these consultancy groups attempting to scream harassment or community managers saying some really tone-deaf stuff, or the bridge crap, as you can see, the game is evolving and we clearly need to evolve with it. They can attempt to attack us or whatever else, just stand together and reject their nonsense. They need us far more than we need them after all, and the sooner companies abandon these concepts, the better they will be in the future. And most of these consultancy groups are full of crap anyway, because need I remind you that cease and desist that Black Girl Gamers sent to that park place, they said that they would escalate their claims on April 5th, 2024. And obviously, as you know, we're past that date already. They know they can't do anything and they have no power in stopping the movement. So I just want to remind you that you're winning and don't harass anyone and just stay vigilant. Thank you for watching, like, subscribe, and share the video to spread the message, and thanks to my patrons for their undying support. Seriously, thank you so much for all the support you guys give me across everything. It means the world. I'll keep going as long as you're all with me, and I'll see you in the next one.